May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Well, I've already explained kind of what Christ the King is about, so I don't need to do that again. About how today is New Year's Eve in the church. And I kind of touched on what Christ the King is all about. That should help that. Our readings today are not the most accessible. They're not the most pleasant. They remind us about a lot of the bad things that we, humanity, did to God among us, Emmanuel, Jesus Christ. But in this one encounter with Pilate, we learn a lot about our calling as Christians, about the example that Christ set, and what it means or should mean for us in our daily lives. That last sentence. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. That's key. That belonging. It's not everyone who listens to the truth. Here's what I'm saying. It's everyone who belongs to the truth hears my voice. If we don't belong to the truth, we're not hearing what Christ is saying. I came into the world to testify to the truth. So what Jesus told us, these stories that we pass down, that's Jesus telling us or testifying to the truth. And our calling is to belong to that truth. Not just to read it, to digest it, to listen, to kind of try and figure out what he meant, but to belong to it. That's what the reign of Christ is. It's so much more than saying, well, we have a spiritual leader. You kind of listen to your spiritual leader. I hope you're listening. I hope I'm leading. But you don't belong to me. You don't belong to what I say. You do belong to Christ and to the truth that Christ spoke into the world. Now, this past week, one of the things that has been going around Facebook, I get a lot of inspiration from some of the stuff that goes around Facebook. Some of it's horrible. Some of it's quite good. There's been this discussion about the idea that Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were refugees. Now, a lot of people are tying that to the time at the inn, which at that point they were not refugees. They were seeking refuge. They needed shelter. And they were relegated to a stable, not because people didn't accept them, but because there was no room. They were refugees slightly after that, when they fled to Egypt to avoid being killed by Herod, or killed by Herod's order. Now, one of the things that came up when this was pointed out was, well, there's pretty good evidence that that never actually happened. So what? Truth and fact are not the same thing. Especially when you're talking about truth with a capital T, which this is what is being talked about here. The truth is that God loved the world enough to come as the poorest of the poor to come and be pushed outside of society. And that's what truth that story is telling us. Is that regardless of whether or not he was literally a refugee, he identified as a refugee. And this is part of who God was among us. That's the truth that Jesus testified to. So how do we belong to that truth? Well, we have the situation in the world right now where it's very easy to either reject that or belong to it. There's lots of talk about how we can't accept refugees because we can't guarantee security. How often did Jesus say, well, be good to strangers, but only if you can be sure you're going to be safe? I can't remember a single time he said anything like that. How many times did he say, well, if somebody's doing bad things to you, bomb them? No, he said, don't return evil for evil. How many times did he say, well, when there are a whole bunch of poor people coming to you, make sure you weed out the ones who might not be very nice, and only help the ones who are going to be friendly? No. He said, welcome the stranger. Care for the needy, the oppressed. Reach out to the poor, to all those in need. He said, when you are offered hate, do not respond with fear or more hate, but respond with love. That is the only way to defeat an ideology, which is what's going on right now in the world, are huge numbers of ideologies. Beliefs that are held so strongly that facts don't matter. That other people's truth doesn't matter. You don't defeat them with violence, because violence only reinforces. It doesn't matter how many members of ISIS are killed, because when their violence is repaid with violence, it teaches that violence is an answer, and you just get more. The only way to defeat an ideology is by saying, it's not true. Your violence is not going to make me hate you. It's going to teach me that you need to be shown love. That this is missing from your life. How do you change the situation which gives rise to this? Which is poverty, homelessness. Do you do it by bombing people's homes, removing the place where they can live? No. You do it by providing a home, providing the necessities of life, instead of taking them away. We're at a time in this world where we have to make these choices, where we have to choose between being safe and being good. Being safe and being followers of Christ. Not once did Jesus ever say that if you follow me, you will be safe. He said, take up your cross and follow me. Risk being hurt. risk even dying to show God's love. And not only if you can guarantee first that you won't run across somebody who wants to do you harm. This is a very hard thing to live. It's a very, at this time, political position to be in. Because we hear a lot of this call for safety first from our politicians. We can't get caught up in fear. As is said in here at least 365 times, one for every day of the year, you can look through the Bible and find a spot where it says, be not afraid, fear not. A number of different ways of saying the same thing. But there's one for every day of the year. There's also spots where it says, fear the Lord your Maker. It's a different word. It means something completely different. It's kind of like be in awe of, as in know that he is beyond our power and understanding. But it doesn't say fear your enemies. It doesn't say fear the poor. It doesn't say fear the homeless, the refugee. For all of those, it says love. So I pray that with God's help, we can love one another. We can love God with enough strength and in that truth that we can let it show forth, that we can be a light, that we can be part of what changes these ideologies of division, of if you don't believe the same as me, that hurts me. The ideologies of saying everybody that looks remotely like a particular group is a threat. This spring, my kids and I and Victoria are going to be going to the States for a vacation time. And I have been warned that before going, I might want to shave my beard. Because everyone with a beard, whether it's long or short, is being identified as Muslim and being given all kinds of hassles by customs and by others. That's really, really sad. Not just because it's targeting people who aren't Muslims, but because it would target Muslims at all. Another thing that came to me through Facebook was an article, a report of what a politician in the States said about the constant claims that Obama is a Muslim because of his actions of supporting those who are of the Muslim faith. And what it said I thought was really important. First of all, it said he's a devout Christian. He is an active member of a church. This has been well established. But who cares? That's irrelevant. So what if he was a Muslim? That makes absolutely no difference. And it shouldn't be news. We're all made in God's image. We're all God's people. We are all called in God's name to make this world a better place. be to God.